Hey everybody, welcome back. A new edition of Dizzo's Den as we begin 2021 with a large amount of FCS news to digest. Obviously, in the wake of the Missouri Valley Football Conference announcing that at least 10 of its member schools have committed to playing football in the spring, then comes the news out of the Big Sky that Montana, Montana State, and Portland State will not play in this spring football season and compete for the FCS championship. On top of that, there's a bunch of realignment news to get into. So who better to discuss that with than Sam Herder from Hero Sports, who does a great job covering the FCS division as a whole. We dive into those topics and what it means for the FCS and the probability of even having a championship at the end of the spring season. We got lots to cover here as we sit on the 15th of January, where the FCS season is supposed to start roughly a month from now, and there are teams still making up their minds to decide if they want to play or not. North Dakota State opens spring football camp in a week from now, and we still really don't know what the schedule is going to look like now for the spring of 2021. Time to bring on Sam Herder from Hero Sports, the pride of Breckenridge. I can only say that as a caveat since my wife is from Breck as well. I don't want you to take too much offense to that, okay?
Yeah, that sounds good. Go Cowboys and Cowgirls.
Hey, well, let's first dive into the big news that just broke here within the half hour on the Montana schools. And I'm not surprised on this, Sam, just for the fact of when the announcement was made on the FCS to the spring, numerous things came to mind. A, the amount of games, but B, was also where to practice for these schools like the Montanas that don't have an indoor facility. You can't really practice outside in January, and that proved to be a problematic right from the start.
Yeah, and this Montana State opting out is obviously a pretty big blow to the FCS.
No
Those
doubt.
are two top 10 programs. You could probably even make the argument that they could be ranked in the top 5 coming into the season, into the spring season. But I always got the vibe that they were never too enthused about playing in the spring, obviously because of the number of games in the calendar year, but also where are they going to practice? I mean, all of the Dakota schools have options as far as practicing indoors. Montana State don't. So, how exactly do they get ready for a spring season without being able to, do what they want to do just because of the weather? So I caught wind of this was going to come this morning. Then like 15 minutes before the press release came out, I got more details, them saying, they do plan on playing at least 2 non-conference games. Who those opponents are, when the dates are going to be, that's to be determined. But as far as them opting out of the spring season, it was disappointing to see, obviously, but you understand it, and it wasn't a shocker by any means.
You think they end up playing one another? Like it's kind of a spring football scrimmage kind of deal?
I wonder, in the press release, they did say, I believe they said non-conference, but at the same time, I don't know if maybe the Big Sky told them, okay, you can't play each other, you can't play conference opponents if you are going to opt out. But at the same time, if hopefully we're in a better place in April, but, let's say Montana is in a good place where they can have 50-60% capacity for a quote unquote Brawl the Wild game. It would be great to see that, just to see those players play each other, and also obviously to get some ticket revenue coming in. So I don't know if they will play each other. I don't know if they can, but I'm sure they are at least thinking of that opportunity to potentially play each other.
Portland State also joins them, and we know the situation in Oregon is not good. And Sam, just from reading the press release out of UC Davis with its basketball teams, I have to think they're probably not far behind either, that they're not gonna be able to play in the spring, specifically on Davis.
Yeah, so I think UC Davis wants to play in the spring. It's just a matter of will they be able to,
right?
Because straight up they just might not be able to because of the county guidelines. But I know the Big Sky came out and said they do have 9 teams still wanting to play a 6-game schedule. That tells me that those 9 teams have reaffirmed that they want to play. But I mean, UC Davis just might not be able to. I don't know exactly where Cal Poly is at with that, what they could be allowed to do or not. I mean, you have to wonder. Eastern Washington seems like they really do want to play, but at the same time, money, location, you just don't know. So there could be more Big Sky teams coming. But right now, it seems like those 9 schools have told the Big Sky that, hey, we're in for right now.
You love the FCS as much as I. With this announcement, how big a blow? I mean, this is huge. It's Montana State. It's not Dayton and Indiana State. You know what I mean? These are two of the premiers. If they're not playing, I hate the word asterisk, but that the spring is diminished with them not there, no doubt.
It is, yeah. And, like we talked about, they are top 10 programs, top 5 programs. I don't think it was a coincidence that the Missouri Valley came out the same day this morning that said, hey, we're reaffirming that we are planning on playing with the remaining teams, not Indiana State. I think the Valley wants to play. Obviously, I think they want to play they want the playoffs to happen because you can make an argument that there's, North Dakota State is obviously the favorite. South Dakota State is contender. Northern Iowa lost a lot, but they could contend. Illinois State maybe could contend. They lost their running back and their starting quarterback. But I think the Valley came out with that just to maybe as a message to other teams and conferences that say, hey, we're still in. We want the playoffs to happen. I think more teams are going to opt out. That's absolutely going to happen, but I think it depends who opts out. If it's, Morehead State, UT Martin, Northwestern State, no offense to those teams, but they're not on the national radar. If they opt out, no big deal. But if Weber State opts out, if Villanova opts out, if Nichols opts out, James Madison opts out, then it's like, all right, how good is this playoff bracket going to be? What's the integrity of the bracket going to be?
And the crazy part is these schools, they have to make up I don't know why they waited this long. I know you've talked about this and written about this. It's not like this snuck up on anybody. You know what I mean? Like, we knew the schedules. We knew when they were start to play. I'm not quite sure why, unless they wanted to hold on to recruits or players on the team, not to bail either before signing day or when they actually signed. You know what I mean? Like the commitment to play, because they could have made this decision in October.
Right. And so obviously everyone should understand as far as if the reason they're not playing is because of too many games in a calendar year. I mean, that is understandable, but if that's the reason you're giving in these press releases now, like you said, you should have came out and said that in October because you knew the number of games your conference set the schedule. In my opinion, teams probably won't do this, but if the reason they aren't playing is because of financial issues, just come out and say that. People will understand and just say, hey, we were hoping to play this spring. We were hoping, the COVID would be better or we could get a decent chunk of people in our stadium, but it hasn't gotten better in this country and we won't be able to have ticket revenue and we can't afford to travel. We can't afford to test players. If you just say that, I don't think people will have a problem with that. But the fact that some teams, Indiana State said player safety is an issue. It's okay. That's understandable. We get that. That's a lot of games, but I saw one former player say it's unfortunate because the Indiana State players were told, don't travel during the holidays, don't go see family so we can, quote, play in the spring. And then in January to say we're not playing in the spring, you kind of, I don't know what the vibe is like in the locker room, but you have to think a lot of the Indiana State players are kind of going, well, we were kind of strung along here a little bit.
And from what I was told, Sam, they got back last weekend, started going through all the COVID protocols and testing, and then find that out on Monday. So clearly nobody was talking to the football team on what exactly was going to happen because then they dropped the bomb Monday night.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's just been a terrible year for, college players, the country just in general. But it's, it just stinks because it didn't allow some of those players to maybe entertain the transfer portal. But at the same time, if you're a senior and you're set to graduate in May, you could be saying to yourself, all right, the fall season didn't happen as we expected, but hey, at least I have 5, 6, 7 games left in my college football career. And now those players are going to be set to graduate in May and they're just going, I guess my football career is done now. I guess we're not playing. So it's unfortunate all the way around of, how everything has happened during this academic year.
I think some take when I do my show each day, I think I'm rooting against the spring, and that's not it. If there's football, great, but I struggle with having so many games and not impacting the fall. If the NCAA wants a full fall 2021, there's no way that can't be impacted by playing. If North Dakota State plays at the minimum, let's just say 11 games from February to May, there's no way that's not going to hurt them in September. And there will be other teams too.
Exactly, yeah. And I was told back in probably October when conferences were still kind of forming their spring schedule that no matter what they do, they do not want to impact the
Right.
fall of 2021, because FCS teams can't say, all right, we'll start playing in October because all the money games are in September.
Right.
So they have to play in September. I think for a lot of FCS teams, it is doable to play in the spring and the fall, because most teams obviously don't make the playoffs. They'll play 6 to 7 games in the spring and then play 11 games in the fall. And so that's, 17, 18 games in 9 months. NDSU and JMU played 16 games in 5 months. But the problem is, if you're NDSU, South Dakota State, Weber State, James Madison, you're playing 8 in the spring, potentially 3-4 more,
right.
and then 3 months off, 11 games, and then 3-4 more in the fall playoffs. So it's those, the top 10% of the FCS where it's like, wow, how are they going to do that? But at the same time, it's that 10% that might be the most motivated to play because they want to win a national championship. But the other 90% aren't contenders, don't have a lot of money to use, but at the same time, they can probably play 18 games in 9 months. So it's just kind of, how is this going to work? Is it going to happen or not? I think we are going to see FCS versus FCS games, a lot of them in the spring. I don't know if the playoffs, that we could be going down the road where the playoffs don't happen.
Yeah, that was my next question to you.
Yeah. Just play games if you want, play a conference game to get some ticket revenue, to give players a chance to play, because I know there are obviously a lot of players that aren't looking forward to playing in the spring and the fall, but at the same time, I feel like there are more players that do want to play some in the spring. I know Indiana State players wanted to play in the spring. I know a lot of Patriot League players, when they were waiting, they wanted to play in the spring, because if you think about it, the spring season is canceled. These players could go 21 months without playing. So they want to play. Yep. I just don't know if playing into May for the playoffs, if that will happen or not. But I do think we will see some type of FCS spring season.
The part on that is, like, North Dakota State specifically, they moved to the spring because the FCS championship was going to be held in the spring. If somehow the NCAA comes out, and I don't know if this is going to happen, and say, you know what, it's not going to happen, the Bison could say, well, all right, well, then we're not. They may start and may not finish. I could see a ton of teams do that too.
And the thing is, too, if, let's say the spring season starts and the playoffs are still on, but all of a sudden, look at maybe Western Illinois is 0-5.
Yeah.
What's stopping them from saying, you know what, we're not going to play these last 3 games because our players are beat up. What's the point of finishing? And then all of a sudden, maybe that costs NDSU a home game. I don't know if NDSU plays Western Illinois, but it costs someone a home game. And it messes with the schedule. So we know the FBS season was a mess, but it did finish. They started and they did finish. I think the FCS can, if they want to. It's just a matter of how many teams are fully on board for the whole season and to go through with it.
Right now, your gut says, percentage-wise, of the FCS getting to the finish line, what would you put it at right now?
As far as starting and crowning a national champion, I would say, I'm right at, I would say 51%. I think it is going to happen. I'm teetering. As far as us seeing some type of FCS season, I'm 75% sure we'll see some type of FCS season. I don't think it'll get canceled as a whole. But as far as crowning a national champion on May 15th, 16th, I don't want to ride the fence, but I am very 50-50 on that happening.
I'm there and maybe losing it by the hour now with Montana State out. You know what I mean? I think there's just, we knew Indiana State was going to be the first. They were going to take the bullet. You know what I mean? And it was going to be easier for other schools after. So now, who's next? We saw the Montana schools. Now I'm curious, Sam, who's following them?
Yeah. I do think it is a good sign overall that the Patriot League opted in January. Because it would be weird if the Patriot League opted in on January, I think it was the first or second week of January, then all of a sudden 2 weeks later opt out. And so I think it is a good sign that if the Patriot League teams are in, then a lot of other teams are going to be in as well. So I do think that is a good sign. Like the Valley said, it seems like Western Illinois and all those other teams in the Valley are on board. But now it's a matter of just a team here or there opting out. I still kind of look at the Pioneer League. That's a lot of travel for them.
No way they're going to play.
Dayton already opted out. San Diego obviously is another California team. Can they play or not? So more are coming. By this point in the week, I thought we are going to see 10 more teams. That hasn't happened yet. There's still we might see a 5 p.m. Friday news dump. Who knows? But there are more coming eventually. I just don't know if it's going to be like 50 in the next 2 weeks. I don't know if that is going to happen or not, but we'll see.
The news dump happened in the morning with the conference realignment, and I wanted to ask you about that because from yesterday's decision announcement with the WAC, which we knew was coming, and basically Brad Teague, I had him on my show a couple times, and he spilled the beans both times on Central Arkansas and NDSU. We're talking. This is before they actually scheduled the game, and then obviously when they did play, and spilling the beans on Atlantic Sun football. And they have, some pretty high aspirations, I'll say. FBS seems crazy to me, but that's a whole other topic. First, let's start with Atlantic Sun football. And this is happening this fall. Like, this is going to happen with these teams, Central Arkansas, Jacksonville State, Eastern Kentucky, Kennesaw, these are teams, 3 of them that are quarterfinalists in recent years. They're going to be making up a brand new football league. Yeah,
and you need 6 teams in your conference to have an auto bid.
Right.
And right now we know of 5. Eastern Kentucky and Jacksonville State still haven't come out.
They're going.
But yeah, all indications are they're going. It's funny because, the AD, there hasn't been an official press release from UCA, but he said multiple times, on shows that, we're going to the ASUN. So we'll see who the 6th team is. I was curious for a little bit when the ASUN rumors first started circulating, because in the ASUN, like Kennesaw State, North Alabama, they play all their sports in the ASUN, but there's an agreement with the Big South that if you sponsor football, you'll play in the Big South. So for a little bit, I was thinking maybe there'll be some Big South ASUN merger conference that has UCA, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, Monmouth, North Carolina A&T is joining the Big South. And I was thinking, whoa, that's going to be a dang good conference. But now it seems like that's splitting. And so you're going to have a small ASUN conference, and then you're going to have the Big South that loses Kennesaw State, which is a big blow in North Alabama. And so you're wondering if North Carolina A&T is kind of going, whoa, maybe we jumped in the Big South too soon. And the Big South will be getting a little smaller, but they've also added some teams recently. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see what comes with the ASUN, because the Teague did say that the hope is the ASUN 6 eventually goes FBS. We know the WAC said they hope to go to the FBS, but they'll kind of decide if that's possible or not. But I feel like the ASUN, those teams are more likely to go FBS than some of those WAC teams.
I look at it with these schools specifically. I look at Kennesaw. We saw North Alabama come up here a couple years ago, and obviously they have high hopes to do well in FCS. Throwing FBS around, I don't know if that's just to bolster support for the university, because all of these schools seem like a million miles away from FBS in my mind.
Yeah, you kind of wonder, especially for the WAC, those teams that are joining that conference, if, they say that they will look into joining the FBS, and they'll probably have some outside firm come in to evaluate things. But I wonder if most of those teams probably realize that the FBS isn't going to happen, but they're saying that to either generate excitement or, to maybe gauge New Mexico or New Mexico State's. Can't remember which one of those is FBS independent.
New Mexico State is an FBS independent right now.
Yep. And they're a part of the WAC, but not for football. Maybe they were trying to gauge their interest with that. I don't see the WAC honestly moving to the FBS. The ASUN seems more realistic to me for that to happen, which I don't know if that's going to happen soon. But I do know Central Arkansas has big time aspirations to be FBS. And they feel like going to the ASUN will speed up that process.
I found the tweet. It was Kendall Rogers, who covers college baseball. He's the one who broke the story on Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, and Jack State to the Atlantic Sun, which I remember doing the show that day saying, I'm like, wow, there's no way they're not moving without football as well. And like you said, I thought, all right, well, I know the Big South has its deal with the Atlantic Sun, so you just thought that was going to be a merger there. But my point out of this is, if the WAC is going to get an automatic bid for this year and the Atlantic Sun, now the FCS playoffs look vastly different because you've got 12 automatic bids and 12 at-larges. So the days, and you and I have done our bracketology, the days of 5 or 6 bid leagues are over, and the days of 6-win teams, that's done too if this comes to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, because usually, I mean, you had the 6-5 Western Illinois team from a few years ago. It was one of the last teams in. That's not going to happen anymore.
Southern Illinois 7 wins last year that didn't get a sniff. That they wouldn't be in either now. You know?
Yeah, and so it does take away from a couple extra at-large bids. But I do think, the ASUN, I think, is going to be a strong conference with those 5 teams, and then whoever the 6th team is. The WAC, I guess if Sam Houston State is taking that auto bid, I don't know if people would, have a huge problem with that, just because Sam Houston State is a strong team. But if all of a sudden, Tarleton State takes that auto bid. I mean, they could be a great program, but NDSU fans will be like, Tarleton State, are you kidding me? South Dakota State fans will be saying that as well. Maybe Tarleton State gets in over Northern Iowa one year. So things are changing. That is for sure. Yeah.
That's the part that's really interesting to me, and we'll wrap here just because obviously there's a small, loud faction of North Dakota State fans that are anxious to maybe look elsewhere, seeing what Coastal and what Liberty did this year. I don't know what these moves is not going to appeal to Bison fans to say, you know what, this is, especially if we're hearing these other schools who are, Kennesaw State's been a program for 5 years? North Alabama's brand new to FCS. Tarleton's brand new. I mean, hearing them already talk about FBS, that's not going to go over well up here.
Yeah, and it's, I did see some, tweets. It was just, from fans, talking. But, when they found out that the WAC was planning or wanting to go FBS, some were saying, well, maybe NDSU should just jump in there and dominate and, be a part of the FBS. No, that's not going to happen, just because, like we said, the WAC actually going FBS seems doubtful. But yeah, if you're NDSU, and you've had this discussion plenty of times, on your radio show that I've been listening to it. NDSU, if the Mountain West doesn't happen with Boise State moving out, potentially NDSU moving in, if that doesn't happen for NDSU, like NDSU is just kind of stuck where they're at. No conference has invited them. They're far away. How realistic is it to get a football only invites? Possibly now with the Mountain West, but if the Mountain West came calling and wanted all sports, would NDSU really be able to afford all sports to the Mountain West? Nope. So it's just, I've been telling this to FCS fans, because every year it's time for NDSU to move up, and it's just look at the budget, look at the lack of conference invite, look where Fargo is located. Yep. NDSU is just kind of stuck where it is, and the hope is, my hope, obviously you want to see NDSU stay in the FCS because it's good for the league, and you just hope that other teams rise to them. But if all of a sudden some of these teams like Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State are leaving for the FBS, maybe James Madison does too, and then you have new programs coming in like Dixie State, Tarleton State, and I think Rio Grande Valley coming in. Right. It's like NDSU is just kind of like, hey, the FCS continues to get more watered down, and we're kind of stuck here. So I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions and be sitting in Matt Larson's office trying to figure out, what to do with the future of the program.
Before I let you go, have you had any conversation with the MEAC about them wanting to pursue the automatic bid beyond the spring? I know they play the Celebration Bowl. Is that something? Because there's another, if they do that, that's another at-large bid that would go away.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't had those discussions. I know the Celebration Bowl and the ESPN TV deal, I think it's up. It's this year might be the last year, or 2021 might be the last year. I know. I mean, the MEAC in the 2010s when they did play in the playoffs, I don't think they won one playoff game, 0 for 7 or something like that. In the Celebration Bowl is it is a moneymaker. You're going to make money playing in the Celebration Bowl,
and they're on national TV too.
Yeah,
that's a huge deal.
And so I don't think they want to stray away from that. Okay. I think the MEAC right now is more worried about its participation numbers because North Carolina A&T left, Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, I think, for the SWAC.
SWAC,
for the SWAC. And so I think right now the MEAC is more worried about maybe bringing in some more teams or just kind of seeing where they're at. But I don't think the Celebration Bowl is going to go anywhere, but that's my speculation, not anything that I've been told.
Those 3 are big. A&T, obviously, but Florida and Bethune-Cookman has been good for a bit as well. That's I'm interested to see how that pans, especially going for their biggest rival. Leaving the MEAC for the SWAC, that can't be sitting well. I know A&T's going to the Big South. That's just interesting to see how that's going to map out. This was great, bud. Thanks for giving us a few minutes and breaking it all down, because we got more stuff coming, I got a feeling.
Yeah, it was great to be on to break all this down and talk some FCS, and we'll see where things go from here.
All right, bud. Be well. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Dom.
We thank Sam for coming on to discuss what's happening in the FCS. If you missed any of previous Dizzo's Den podcasts, you can download them at iTunes. Just search Dizzo's Den. Of course, all podcasts, including Kolpak and Izzo, the McFeely Mess, available at Inforum.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.